The cult of Baal,
Yes.
B-A-L. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly, but behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists.
Welcome to Fractals of Madness. This is our first video together. I hope you enjoyed the intro, as this is my first time using video editing software. I was motivated to make this video after watching a couple of things on a corner of YouTube that I'm not usually a part of. I first watched a video from a channel called Polarity about shapeshifters in Hollywood, which then led me to an interview conducted by Shaun Attwood, another person that I haven't heard of, interviewing a lady named Anya Wick, who purports to be the niece of Jeffrey Epstein, the late financier, pedophile, and child sex trafficker. The link to both those videos will be in the description box down below. This video will not be about whether or not Hollywood, science, and the greater political sphere is being run and manipulated by pedophiles. There's something about Anya's story that piqued my interest and alerted my spider sense. And after some digging, I found some things that I think you all will find very interesting. So join me, friends, for the first time as we descend into madness. Anya Beth Epstein was born in December of 1991. At least, that's what her driver's license says. She claims she was born on one occasion in 1988 and on the other occasion in 1987. However, the information that I found shows December of 1991. Anya's legal parents are Stephen Epstein, a prominent divorce and family attorney in Colorado, and Kari Epstein, a cellist. She has one half-brother and one twin brother, Noah and Daniel, respectively. Noah and Daniel are both very successful gentlemen, pioneers in their field of study, and both run successful businesses. From the few family photos that I could find, it seems Anya, Noah, and Daniel all grew up in an upper middle class household and had, for all intents and purposes, a normal, stable childhood. I've watched the interview with Anya and Shaun more times than my stomach can stand, and that's not for the reason you think. But I've compiled a list of all of the incredible claims made by Anya. At least as many as I could stomach. The podcast is not my usual form of entertainment, and they talk about some very harsh topics. I'm going to go through my list of the main points that I think are relevant to this video. Firstly, Anya is the niece of Jeffrey Epstein. She was raised as a sex slave. She was separated from her birth mother, who is Shayna LaBeouf, and her twin brother, who is the actor Shia LaBeouf. She was frequently drugged with what she describes as MK Ultra. She had her birth certificate changed with a biological sibling when she was 8 years old. Her family is part of the cult of Baal, and she makes sure that every time she says Baal, she spells it B-A''A'-L. Do not forget the apostrophe. Her grandfather and the father of Jeffrey Epstein is a man named Arthur Bick. He has a sister named Minnie Bick, who is the inspiration for the character Minnie Mouse, because the brother, Arthur, is actually Walt Disney. Her father, Stephen, secretly controlled and operated Viacom. She was given macro doses of the drug she refers to as MK Ultra many times in her life. And the last part is she's going through a divorce with her ex-husband, Alexander Wick, who's a very interesting character, and we'll get to him in a minute. Those are a lot of substantial claims. We're going to go through each one and talk about it, and I'll let you form your own conclusion. Now, we know that Jeffrey Epstein had one brother, Mark, that's well known and well documented. Also, Mark looks exactly like Jeffrey Epstein. Stephen, however, does not. We also know who Jeffrey and Mark's parents are, but conveniently, they are not the same parents that Stephen has. Now, I've decided against showing pictures and naming the parents of Stephen, because the remaining one is very advanced in age, and this documentary is going to be intrusive enough. Take my word for it, they're not related to the Epsteins of the news. Now, Anya's whole crux of this one is that she looks similar to the actor Shia LaBeouf's mother. Here's a picture of them. You can deduce for yourself whether or not there's any resemblance. Personally, I think she looks more like Steve and Kari. I will flash a picture again of her twin brother Noah, who looks exactly like Anya, and he looks exactly like Kari and Steven. Now, Anya states that Stephen controlled Viacom while his paralegal ran his divorce practice. I can't think of a more insulting thing to tell your father than his profitable business was just a facade ran by a paralegal. For those of you that don't know what Viacom is, it was a media conglomerate that merged with CBS in 2019. They owned Nickelodeon and Paramount and were a very large company. Now, the reason that I can say with certainty that Viacom was not ran by Stephen is that he was not just a family attorney. This man is a leader in his field. And I'm going to sit here and read you only a small portion of this man's published works when it comes to family law. 2006, Qualified Medical Child Support Order. 1993, Nuptial Agreements. 94, Colorado Prenuptial Agreements. 95, Equitable Distribution in Divorce Settlements in Colorado. 96, Exotic Property, Celebrity Goodwill Trust, Stock Options, and Limited Partnerships. 96, Family Law Litigation in Colorado. 98, Colorado Practice Guide for Matrimonial Lawyers' Nuptial Agreements. 98 again, Colorado Family Law Practice for Paralegals. 99, Parental Rights and Responsibilities and Time Sharing in Colorado. Legislative Update, Family Law Litigation, Third Parties, Grandparents, and Allocation of Parental Responsibility, When, Not If, Surviving and Thriving in Forensic Context, Bench, Bar, and Couch, Constitutional Complications. I mean, the guy was a leader. He has on his website, you can go look at this, he's got speaking dates where other attorneys come to listen to him talk about his craft. This man is not just scooting by on his paralegal's coattails. There's no way. He's got too many published works, and he's got too many conferences in which he is the main keynote speaker. Now, one of the more ridiculous claims made by Anya is that her grandfather, her great-grandfather, is Walt Disney, whose actual name is Artur Bick. Now, Walt Disney is a very famous character. His family tree is well documented. His parents are very much known. Where he grew up was known. He was not born outside of the United States. One of the other claims is that he married or had children with his twin sister, Minnie Bick, and that's where the inspiration for Minnie Mouse came from. We have a very specific outline of how Mickey and Minnie Mouse were created. Walt Disney lost his original character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And after the rights to that was lost, him and his team animated and created a new mouse because Walt Disney found a mouse in his studio that was friendly. Had nothing to do with his sister. I even did some research on the Bick name, and there was never any prominent figures with the last name of B-I-C-K-E. The closest that I could get was E-I-C-K-E, Eich, which was a German family who came over in the mid-1800s, well before the birth of even Walt Disney's parents. Now, there was a Minnie Eich, but she is not at all related to Walt Disney or the Walt Disney family. Because Minnie Eich, God rest her soul, died at the age of 22 in Douglas, Nebraska, a little bit far from Illinois, where Walt Disney was born. Now, Anya describes that she was given macro doses of a substance called MK Ultra to alter her memory and perception of reality as a child. Now, I'm sure everybody knows MK Ultra is not a drug. MK Ultra was an operation in the 50s and 60s by the CIA in order to try and create mind control or certain truth serum drugs in order to aid with covert intelligence. She never really says LSD, which was the primary drug for MK Ultra. There were others, but on the whole, LSD was the most famous and the most widely used during that project. She never says LSD. She refers to it as being given MK Ultra, and the first time I heard it, it reminded me of an Everyone Loves Raymond episode where Marie talks about taking the pot, you know. She doesn't refer to it as how a normal person or someone familiar with the substance refers to marijuana. It's the same thing with Anya. She refers to it as MK Ultra. Now, in addition to not referring to it correctly, she states that she was given LSD numerous times, perhaps even countless times as a child. And for anybody familiar with people that have done LSD, it's a very powerful drug, and you can't blast a child with LSD for their entire life and then microdose them sort of along the way without them turning into a drooling vegetable. I mean, people that have bad trips on LSD are sometimes out in one trip, maybe 5 trips. They're not continuously just getting a stream of LSD. You can't do that. Your body can't tolerate it. So the fact that she purports that she was being given MK Ultra, or what I assume to be LSD, I could be wrong, she just could not have come up with a better drug, to me is totally irrational. Now, I did speak with a ex of Anya, at the time Owen, because she was on hormone replacement therapy and did have a few gender affirming surgeries. This ex tells me that she was addicted to heroin. I'm going to quote from her ex. Her primary trauma at the time was her past heroin addiction. And at the time, it seems like her transitioning was what helped her overcome her addiction. Like she was just so in denial about her gender identity that drugs were a way with coping with it. And her transitioning and living as her most authentic self, i.e., as a man, is what got her out of that ugly cycle. Anya has this story that she talks about where there's this crazy sort of litigation where her ex-husband wanted her to get a divorce so that she could use the testimony of her childhood abuse to be admissible in court, so that perhaps people that abused her sexually as a child would somehow now have evidence against them. That's sort of what I understood. It's not very logical, so it's kind of hard to put it in logical terms. That's how I understood it. Now, the relationship between Anya and Alex was very interesting, to say the least. From comments on Reddit, I've seen that they dated for only a month before they got married. Now, this post was possibly done by Anya, possibly done by Alex. We don't know who, but it says, quote, "Thank you for this. She asked me to marry her after only knowing me for a month. We eloped of June of 2022. She served me with the dissolution paperwork last May." So 11 months they were married. And also, she pushed through the divorce by threatening to kill me via text, which I reported to the police. Anya actually started a GoFundMe to try and procure funds to help divorce Mr. Alex. I'll read from that posting. "My name is Anya Wick, formerly Epstein. I moved back to New York to respond to my ex-husband's petition for an annulment and $20,000. He is committing heresy," I think she means hearsay, "and telling the courts I did not disclose my background of trafficked as a child until after we were married, making the argument that such a failure to disclose my abuse made our marriage fraudulent. I have been threatened by my family, and I am seeking assistance in acquiring an attorney and finding a safe place to stay after this is all over." Now, this reads exactly like Anya talks, as one giant run-on sentence. I also am not sure how being threatened by the family has anything to do with divorce, unless maybe they're threatening that she needs to divorce him and give him the $20,000. I'm not sure. But unfortunately, the divorce proceedings have already concluded, because I used my special private investigator skills to pull all the information from the case. Now, the date it was filed was July 12th of 2024, and it ended on the 2nd of May with the disposition of decided and an outcome of settlement. Now, Alex is a very interesting character, and in the next section we're going to talk all about him. Now, Alex is a most interesting gentleman, and I use the term gentleman very loosely. A bio that I found online states Alex Wick is a forester, data scientist, and visionary, working at the intersection of climate change, carbon, cryptography, and coding. living a conscious, low-carbon lifestyle since 2009. He also founded 2 companies, first of which is Woodstock Chai and also Cascadia Carbon. Cascadia Carbon is actually still functioning as a business from what I can understand. And they describe themselves as a market-based technology solutions company committing to empowering individuals in the fight against climate change. It was founded in 2019 by Alex Wick, a former USFS forester and data scientist. We are a carbon-neutral public benefit corporation and proud member of Oregon's Carbon Climate Change Collective. Wow, got tongue-tangulated there. Now, when Alex isn't changing the world with his climate change activities, he's also assaulting people because he was arrested in 2018 and convicted of assault in the 4th degree in Portland. And when I was researching addresses for Anya, one of her known associates was Alex, obviously being her husband. So I started researching addresses for Alex, and when I researched one of his addresses, it came up in a police report. And what was that police report in reference to? Was in reference to unlawful manufacture of a destructive device, possession of a destructive device, attempted arson in the 1st degree, criminal mischief in the 1st degree, menacing, and disorderly conduct in the 2nd degree. Now, many of you may have heard the story in Portland after No King's Day of a lunatic with a pressure cooker bomb throwing nails and cones into the middle of Interstate 5 and going up to people with screwdrivers, assaulting them, and then telling people he's got a bomb. Well, that was actually our friend, Mr. Alex. When I first saw it, I could not believe it. I thought that there's no way that this is the same person. But lo and behold, right after the divorce proceedings, our friend Mr. Alex decides to put a bomb on Interstate 5. Now, when Alex is not saving the planet by putting bombs on the freeway, he's also hating cops, because apparently in his Twitter bio, or his Instagram bio, his pronouns are he, they, and a fun fact, all cops are bad. Now, as a former police officer, I take that a little personally. It's very ironic how this man who says that all cops are bad is putting bombs on the freeway. Now, I'm pretty proud of this discovery because it came entirely by accident, but also in the comment section in YouTube for Anya's interview, as well as all of the discourse she's had on TikTok and on Reddit. Nothing has come up about Alex being the same person that was putting bombs on the freeway. So they seem as though they are 2 peas in a pod. Now, I worked in law enforcement for approximately 5 years. And for about the last 3, I've been a private investigator. And you start to learn certain things about the way people say things, how they say things. And when I was watching Anya's interview, I couldn't help but notice some things right off the bat. Now, I'm no body language expert. Perhaps maybe a channel like the Behavior Panel will go over the interview in greater detail from people that have a lot more knowledge and experience than I do. However, I do notice a few things that we're going to talk about Anya's emotions. For those of you that don't know, emotions are chemically driven processes. There are chemicals in the brain that create facial expressions, and they create voice changes and all that fun stuff. Now, when you have a chemical process, chemicals fade away. They don't just shut off. So a really good tip that somebody is being disingenuous with their emotions is that their smile or their sadness or whatever emotion they're displaying outwardly very quickly shuts off. You could see this a lot with Anya when she's showing the emotion of crying or sadness or pain. As soon as she finishes the sentence in which she's describing an event that was painful, her emotions don't gradually dissipate, they turn off like a light switch. That doesn't inherently mean that the person is lying, but as an interviewer and an investigator, that would be a clue to me to hone in on that particular topic. I'm gonna play this clip for you, and then we can talk about it and what I see in it.
I remember this brilliant comedic actor, actually his better dramatic work. My father screaming at him, telling him to penetrate me, and he makes one thrust and backs away, and my father gets outraged and says, "You're going to come. You're going to come." This poor man is crying throughout it.
This is a horrific story, but I think a story is really all that it is. Usually when you're describing being raped by somebody at the behest of your father, you don't remember that the man that's raping you is a comedian, but his dramatic work is slightly better. That stood out to me. Also, the misplaced laughter is something that we see from Anya frequently, and we'll look at more clips of that coming up. However, you can see that after she's done talking about the sadness of it, the emotions completely shut off from her face. They don't fade away. Pay attention to this next clip as we'll see that same theme again.
This insured, I thought I was sick. So when they paid a doctor to tell me that my PTSD responses,
Do you see how quickly she stopped being sad? You have two grief muscles in your face. The first is on your chin. And a lot of things that people that are narcissistic in particular get wrong about crying, they don't fold their eyebrows up. When you're sad and you're crying, you've got the grief muscle in your chin, and the inside of your eyebrows by your nose, they shoot up. They don't come down. Anya's are coming down. That doesn't mean that this isn't a sad story. It means that she's only halfway able to convince herself to be sad. Not to mention that those sad emotions from the face, again, turn off like a light switch. I actually clipped about 7 or 8 more instances of this happening, but we don't need to belabor the obvious. If you'd like to go watch the interview and look for those things that I mentioned. Now I want to move on to another topic. Anya says that the reason why this is not fake is because she's not profiting from it. She lists another reason that, well, if she gets hurt or killed, then her voice is going to become stronger, but people get murdered all the time that are whistleblowers. But towards the very end of the interview, she does state that she is getting donations and monetizing her TikTok, which is how she's able to keep her phone on. Go ahead and watch these clips.
if it weren't real, I'm not profiting from this. You're the reason my phone is still on, because of the donations that you made when we thought I was going to need a lawyer. So I want to do something worthwhile with that.
Now, throughout this whole podcast, Anya continues to denigrate Kari, her mother, who she claims is her stepmother, as somebody that was more sexually attracted to Anya being abused than she was to her own husband. She makes some pretty vile claims, the least of which is not that she's her actual mother. Shania LaBeouf is her actual mother. However, she slipped up a little bit because when she describes a family camping trip, after being sexually abused, she ran out of the cabin and ran back up looking for Kari. And she describes Kari as her mother, not her stepmother. Whoops. Check it out.
Wandering back up the hill to the cabin, screaming out for my mother.
We could go over pretty much every 10 seconds of this and find more inconsistencies. but I need to do a little bit of shtick for a second. Where is she when this is being recorded? There are doors opening. There are people smoking and joking like in the table over. Can you imagine being at like a coffee shop and you open the door and somebody's talking about being raped as a 3-year-old by Bill Clinton at the Bohemian Grove? Like, what must these other people be thinking? Where is she when this is happening? There are people just laughing. And I'm going to throw in some clips here, a little compilation of all of the doors opening and closing and people laughing.
In Tulane, and he wouldn't make eye contact with me, including Donald Trump, who I have to say looked like he was at a funeral. I didn't want to name anyone unless you asked me about them. I think there are a lot of people the public speculate on. And if you bring them up, I'm happy to talk about this in my life. It's been a full monopoly on the American news.
And those were just the clips that I had the patience to take the time to edit. Now, I'm not going to come right out and say that I think Anya is an evil person. I think Anya is a very sick person, but sick is a matter for professional interpretation and diagnosis. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a head shrinker. I think that her story has a lot of inconsistencies. I think that the emotions that she displayed on her interview were disingenuous. I think she has some lingering effects from her drug use. I've talked to numerous acquaintances of Anya that have claimed to have done LSD with her, and there is something called hallucinogenic perpetual perception disorder, wherein people can still have hallucinations, can still see things that aren't there, can create things in their mind. And I think if you pair hallucinogenic use and other drug use with genetic predispositions, I think you're going to get an Anya out of that equation. I have no doubt that Anya has suffered some sort of trauma in her life. I mean, people don't just develop dissociative identity disorder or narcissistic personality disorder because they put their shoes on the wrong foot. Something bad had to happen to her, and for that we should all be very empathetic. If I had to stake a paycheck on it, or if I had to stake my career or my reputation on it, I would say unequivocally that she is not related to Jeffrey Epstein. Her great-grandfather is not Walt Disney, and that she was not ever in Bohemian Grove. I believe her real mother to be Kari Epstein. I don't think she has any relation to the LaBeoufs, and I think she needs to run, not walk, but run to a clinical psychologist, and I think she needs to start taking medication, possibly even enter a inpatient rehab if she's still struggling with drugs. Having watched the interview as many times as I have, I really don't think Shaun also bought it. Just the way that he looked and the blasé attitude he had of follow-up questions made me think that he could tell that these claims were at the very least outlandish. I've never seen another interview, or I've never seen anything else from Shaun. I think he did a really good job of letting her ramble. Some of her answers are what I would describe as tangential. When people have tangential speech, they're asked a question about topic A, and they go to topic B, C, D, E, F, G, and then maybe at the end they'll hit topic A again because they realize they sound a little bit crazy. And she does that a lot in her answers. Some of her answers to a simple question, have you ever met Jeffrey Epstein, for example, are like 15 minutes long, talking about all these different things, Walt Disney. It's just, it's so crazy and it's so fragmented. That's where actually the inspiration for the name of my channel came from, Fractals of Madness. When I would listen to her answer, I would just hear all these different fractals, and they appeared in my mind as a spiral, just descending into this pit of madness. I'm gonna read a verbatim message from one of the people that knew Anya personally that I interviewed. And they say the following: I vaguely recall her posting on her Facebook, when she was still living her life as Owen, that her last name being Epstein was just an unfortunate coincidence, almost like it was a punchline for her. She's also flip-flopped on her relation to Jeffrey. At first, she mentioned that he was her cousin, and now she's saying that he is her uncle. And this is not just coming from this one person. I interviewed 4 people that knew Anya personally, and they all said exactly the same thing. And they all ended with hinting at a little bit of narcissism, which I picked up on in her interview. I want to close out by saying that I would love to interview Anya. It probably wouldn't be a very fun interview for her. It wouldn't be as open-ended as Shaun's podcast. I would ask her very poignant things about her life, and it would almost be a sort of an elicitation rather than just an interview, because I think that she's being misleading. But Anya, if you're listening, the invitation is open to any of the family that I mentioned. I also open an invitation to you. Come on the channel. I'll interview you. We'll talk about all this. I don't believe you're bad people. Stephen, I think you're a great lawyer, and I think that this is horrible what's being said about you. Same thing to Kari. But I don't want people going and bashing Anya. She is a sick lady, and she needs help. And we should be as empathetic to her as we would to anyone else that had any other diagnosed mental conditions. She needs our help. She does not need our blame, shame, guilt, or judgment. But I had fun making this video. Please let me know in the comments down below if you liked it, if you thought it was a sack of poo, or if you'd like to see more topics covered. Please give me ideas. Let me know how my editing is. Let me know how the sound mixing was. Let me know. Judge me harshly. I could take it. I want to improve and I want to become better. And if everybody tells me, oh, it was so great, then I'm not going to be able to improve. So please, give it to me straight, Doc. Let me know. And friends, until next time, stay alert, stay aware, stay vigilant, and look out for the madness.